or 2. So f of x is the square root of x, and g of x is x minus 13. So here I can write this as f of x plus g of x. F of x is the square root of x, and g of x is x minus 13. Simplify. Square root of x plus x minus 13. I can't combine those terms. And so now we look at the domain. So if we look at each domain separately, the domain of f here goes from 0 to infinity, because we have the square root of x, so that's going to be from x greater than or equal to 0. And then the domain of g is negative infinity to positive infinity. So if we look at these two domains, what they have in common is going to be from 0 to infinity. And we can see here, since I have a square root of x, then the domain for the square root of x, remember you take the radicand, which is the number inside, or the variable inside, and we set it equal to 0. And at this point, this is where the domain begins. Okay, so my domain is going to be from 0 to infinity. Let's try the next one. So we have f minus g of x, and I can rewrite that as f of x minus g of x. So f of x is square root of x minus g of x, which is x minus 13. Simplify. So I get square root of x, distribute the negative. Negative negative is positive 13. Again, since I have square root of x, my domain is going to start from 0 to infinity. Letter C, f times g of x is the same as f of x times g of x. So f of x is the square root of x times g of x. So if we simplify, distribute this in here, so we get x square root of x minus 13 square root of x. The domain, you have square roots here, so the domain will start at 0 and go to infinity. And last, we have the quotient. So this would be f of x divided by g of x. So f of x is the square root of x, and g of x is x minus 13. I can't simplify further, so my answer here is the square root of x divided by x minus 13. So if we look at this problem, do we have a fraction? Yes. So for this square root of x, the domain here, for the square root of x, the domain starts at 0. And then for x minus 13, we have a fraction. So remember we set the denominator equal to 0. So x is equal to 13 can't be in the domain. So what this means is that the domain is going to be everything that starts from 0 to infinity with the exception of 13. So we can write that from 0 to 13, union 13 to infinity. Okay, the next one. We have f of x equals x minus 5, and g of x is x squared minus 1. And we're trying to find the product. So the product here is going to be f of x times g of x. So f of x is x minus 5, and g of x is x squared minus 1. Multiply this out. X times x squared is x cubed. X times negative 1 is negative x, minus 5x squared plus 5. Gather any like terms, which we don't have, so this will be our answer. So f of g of x can be written as f of x divided by g of x. F of x is x minus 5. G of x is x squared minus 1. I can't simplify anymore. So my answer is x minus 5 divided by x squared minus 1. Notice here that we don't have any square roots, but we have a fraction. So we set the denominator equal to 0. Take the square root. So your domain cannot include positive 1 or negative 1. Okay, so we cannot have positive 1 and we cannot have negative 1. So my domain will go from negative infinity all the way to negative 1. Then it starts at negative 1 to positive 1. Then it goes from 1 to infinity. Okay, and you can see that on the number line. We're including all of these except for negative 1. Then we start here, except for 1, and then we go on.